Experimental research design is a qualitative research design that bases or examination of a thing under a manipulated or controlled environment is done to determine the validity or truthfulness of such thing. Classification of experimental research is considered the purest form of experimental research. It involves the manipulation of an independent variable, the random assignment of participants to groups, and measurement of a dependent variable. The aim of experiment is to identify cause, and next is quasi-experiment. This type of experimental research is similar to a true experiment, but particular participants are not randomly assigned to a group. Instead, existing groups are used, and a researcher manipulates the independent variables to determine its effect on development variables. It's natural experiment. In this type of experimental research, the independent variable occurs naturally and the researcher cannot manipulate it. The researcher then observes the effects on this independent variable on a dependent variable of interest. Single subject experiment. This type of experimental research involves the study of a single individual or group in details. Over a period of time, the researcher manipulates the independent variable and measures the independent variable to determine the effectiveness of the intervention. Field of experiment. This type of experimental research takes place in a real-world setting, such as workplace or school. The researcher manipulates the independent variable and measures the dependent variable to determine their relationship in a natural environment. Next is laboratory experiment. This type of experimental research takes place in a controlled environment, such as a laboratory. The researcher manipulates the independent variable and measures the dependent variable to determine their relationship without influences extraneous variables. Non-experimental research is generally used when the researcher is not able to manipulate the variable under study. In this research, the aim is observe and describe phenomena as they occur naturally without any intervention from researcher. The following are some research design used in non-experimental research. Descriptive research. This research design is used to describe and analyze exciting conditions or relationships. Survey, case studies, and observation studies are examples of descriptive research. Relational research. This research design is used to determine whether there is a relationship between two or more variables. Relational research does not imply causation but can use to make prediction about the behavior of variables. Longitudinal research. This is research design involves studying a group of individuals over extended period of time. This design is used to investigate changes in attitudes, behavior, and outcome over time. Cross-sectional research. This research design involves collecting data at a single point in time. This design is often used in surveys to gather data about particular population. Ex post factor research. This research design is used to study the effects of a variable that has already occurred. Naturally, research cannot manipulate this variable but can study its effects on other variables. Qualitative research. This research design involves collecting and analyzing and through observation, interviews, or focus group. This design is used to describe and interpret social phenomena and explore participants' experiences, attitudes, and beliefs. A type of research design that resembles experimental research but lacks the level of control typically found in true experiment. This type of research is used when it is not possible or ethical or randomly assigned participants to experimental and control groups. Quasi-experimental research involves the manipulation of an independent variable to observe its effects on a dependent variable, but it does not involve random assignment of participant to group. Quasi-experimental research designs are useful when true experimental designs are not feasible or ethical. However, they do not have the same level of control as true experiments and may be subject to confounding variables. Pre-experimental design. This design involves a single group pre-test post-test design in which researchers collect data on an outcome variable before and after the manipulation of an independent variable. However, there is no control group for comparison. Non-equivalent control groups design. This design involves the correction of a control group that is similar to the experimental group but it is not randomly selected. The researcher may use matching or statistical techniques to create a similar control groups. Time series design. This design involves the collection of a data on an outcome variable over a period of time before and after the manipulation of independent variable. Researchers can use statistic techniques to compare the outcomes before and after the manipulation. Interrupted time series. This design involves a time series design in which an intervention or treatment occurs with a specific point in time. Researchers collect data on outcomes variable before and after the intervention to determine its effects.